It's LSU week, Alabama and the Bayou Bengals, the Tigers and the Tide. We're going to talk about it right here on the All-American Report, brought to you by mybookie.ag. But before we do anything else, let me hit that amazing open. Man, I love that open, man.
Did you mix that yourself, man? Did you get on the ones and twos or what?
Man, it was like Two-Check doing it for us, man. Like Christian's brother. Like just, I mean, that hits, man. I love that open.
I'm a little bit concerned, man. I feel like I'm talking to a stranger a little bit on here, man. You look like somebody's long-lost uncle or somebody that's been living in a van for a little bit. So some of us took the bye week harder than others, man. You look like you were that guy.
Well, this is what happened. You know, that it was time for No Shave November. And I'm like, you know, it's about time that I flash a little bit of style and substance. And so I dropped the stash, just seeing, you know, and I was in Nashville. And I got to tell you, man, like Morgan Wallen has brought the stash, a little bit of this back here going, you know, in the style. And I mean, I know he's a couple years older than me, but he's cool. And so I was going to roll with him, man.
You going all the way to the Raleigh Fingers?
Oh, dude, I wish I could, man. I wish I could. I was hanging out with Carl the Cook Lewis, who's been on the John Boy and Billy show for a long time, and he was talking about Dale Earnhardt last night. How Dale Earnhardt like got his hot sauce, his grilling sauces going, made that connection, those two, and I was thinking to myself, like, you talk about guys that mastered the stash. Dale Senior, man.
Dale Senior, definitely one of them, man. There's not a few guys didn't like Dale Senior. You know, you look at the Chuck Norrises of the world, guys like that, man. They held it up high, man. So I'm glad that they could pave this path for you, man.
We got to get you to shave everything off but the center and see what a stash would look like on Mike Johnson, man. That might be an All-American show.
I have not seen my chin since I was 18. So
really?
Maybe once or twice in college, but definitely not since I was out of college. I've had a beard the entire time, if not a goatee. So I don't know what's on. I don't know what's going on under there, man. I might have an ugly chin. Might not have a chin. I don't know. Could be weird.
I had a friend that always had a beard, and he lost a cornhole game, and then the bet was he had to shave. And as soon as it happened, we were like, "Whoa, okay, put the beard back," you know. Wasn't a whole lot going on underneath there. You know, he didn't have this distinguished chin like the Gillispie chin. He didn't have that for himself.
I might scare my kids if I came around the corner without a beard. So that would be a lot of fun.
I would love it. And I know that feeling because I've had that this week. You know, people are like, whoa, okay. All right, let's talk some football, guys. And let's start with Bama playing in Baton Rouge. It's a night game this Saturday. This is a big game for Alabama. We're going to get into the reasons why, but the Tide has struggled on the road, and this is one of the toughest places to play in the conference.
Yeah, it is. I listen, were you there in 2008 maybe when Bama went to Baton Rouge? I remember them. We get to our hotel the night before, and we turn on the TV, and they're showing like these tailgates burning the effigy of Nick Saban. You know, just what a wild place to play football. I've been talking about this a lot this week as well because, you know, I cover the Atlanta Falcons. The Falcons are going to play the Saints this weekend. So, like, everything's kind of headed that direction. So I've covered it from, you know, I've covered Southern Louisiana from both directions there. And they just do it a little bit differently down there. I got a lot of respect for the way that they get after it down there in Baton Rouge. But I have so many good, crazy memories of that 2008 LSU-Bama game, the Rashad Johnson game, if you will.
Yeah. Going
down there, winning in overtime on the quarterback sneak. Remember the play before that? Julio catches a little out route from John Parker Wilson. Man, just golly, I could relive that 2008 game 10 times over. Just so many little caveats to being able to win that game as the number one team in the country in Baton Rouge. Just like that was like we've actually arrived. You know, it was like, I don't know if we've been tested before now, but like you go down and beat LSU in Baton Rouge as the number one team, Nick Saban back, you know, the rabid student section, dude. Like that was a game that you were like, all right, that's why I came to Alabama right there.
I was at the game. I'll never forget. It's one of the loudest. I might be the loudest moment in the stadium when we missed the chip shot field goal to win that thing in regulation. And I was like,
they blocked it. Yeah, they blocked it.
I was like, we're going to lose, And
you want to know what you want to hear some inside story about that, man? So we lined up for field goal. We had a good field goal protection unit, really solid, right? I think Marcel Darius was on that field goal protection unit as well. No, maybe not that year. Maybe that was 09. We had a really good field goal unit, nonetheless. And I remember that one getting blocked, and we all you could not hear anything. It just sounded like somebody snapping their fingers in your ears. That's what it sounded like. So you get to the sideline, the whole field goal unit's kind of standing there, and we're going, "You? Was it me? No, was it you?" And every single one of us are like, "Nah, I got my guy. Like, my gaps were good. My gaps are good." Turns out it's just a low kick. It's like,
yeah, right. Yeah.
This time on the sideline being like, what happened? Did they get it off the edge? Did they get it over the middle? Was it, they put, no, it was just a low kick. And we were like, man, well, that's unfortunate. Lee just hit a low one. And so I think they actually had to address that. I think Coach Saban had to address it in the post-game presser or maybe the following week. And he was like, what happened on the kick? He's like, it's just a low kick, like that's all there is to it. But man, what a time to have a low one for a guy that ended up being an All-American the following year. And man, but that was you're right. That was one of the craziest, loudest moments that I can ever remember. But what was awesome about that game too is you knew when it got silent that something good had just happened. And obviously Rashad Johnson caused a little bit of silence that day as well. So that game was a lot of fun. That was big boy football played in the trenches at the highest level that day.
Yeah, look, I remember, man, and we had a long losing streak to LSU. It ended that day, and these are the games that matter. And I know that I've said it, and I'll say it again. And some people don't like it when I say it, but when you're at Alabama and you're the head coach, you got to win these games. You got to beat LSU. You got to beat Tennessee. You got to beat Auburn. And there's a lot of pressure on Coach DeBoer. And I know it's his first season because we didn't get the job done against Tennessee. Now you got to get the job done here. And if you don't, the chances of making the college football playoff go right down the drain. And it's a hard place to play in the game that I'm talking about that you guys won in overtime in 08. You were talking about that wasn't a night game there. That one was like a 2:30 game, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, eventually it became night because I remember the guy saying it when it got dark. It's now. Oh no, I'm sorry. The sun has found its home in the western sky. Yeah, what's crazy about you saying that about Kalen DeBoer? I've been kind of tossing this back and forth, throughout the week and last week. I think this may be the most pivotal game in terms of the way Jalen Milroe is remembered as Alabama's quarterback that he'll have all season. I think you look at the losses, obviously, it's not great. You're going to look at the Georgia game, and you're going to look at the first half, second half. You're going to look at this LSU game last year where he rushed for 4 touchdowns. But, when you look at what, how this season sort of hinges on this game against LSU for a guy like Jalen Milroe, you win the game. You're looking at some winnable games down the stretch against a couple of bad SEC teams and obviously Mercer. Right. And you're probably not going to make the SEC title. But if you're able to win this week and win those games and take care of business, maybe you find yourself in the college football playoff. On the flip side, you lose this game if you're Jalen Milroe. Right. You can't get over the hump. LSU may be looking at that, that scenario where they find the college football playoff. That Jalen Milroe has to show up, and this is one of his biggest moments, I think, as an Alabama quarterback, because if he doesn't and you do lose, you're probably out of college football playoff contention. Now, all of a sudden, you're a 3-loss Bama team, and, you don't have much direction moving forward. And now, all of a sudden, you're starting to ask questions about what the immediate future actually is and what bowl game you may or may not make. So I think there's a lot riding on Jalen Milroe and the way we think of him as the Alabama quarterback and what his tenure actually was here at Alabama based on what happens this weekend against LSU. And, Mick, I thought it was really interesting. Brian Kelly kind of stepped to the podium. I don't know if it was today or yesterday because I watched his presser, and he was asked about Jalen Milroe and the things that Jalen Milroe's doing and how different it was from last year. And I almost thought Brian Kelly kind of talked with a little bit of, I don't want to say arrogance, but maybe maybe confidence is a better word. He kind of talked about Jalen Milroe last year. He's like, really didn't know what he is. Some games he's running the ball. Other games he's not. Some games he was the starter last year. Some games he's not. And then all of a sudden he goes against LSU, explodes in the running game, really carried Bama's football team, played sort of in the way that they expected Jaden Daniels to last year before he got hurt.
Yeah.
Right. And then and now this year, it seemed like Brian Kelly was pointing to, he goes, this year you kind of know what he is. They want him to throw the ball. He's not had that much success actually running the football, or at least not what you expected him to have. And you go back and look at Jalen Milroe's numbers, kind of right? I mean, it's just we haven't had the success running the ball north and south with Jalen Milroe that you thought we would after the first couple of games of the year. So I just think there's a lot that hinges on this game in terms of what his legacy is as the Alabama quarterback. And, we'll see. But I think it's definitely going to be a tough task nonetheless.
Well, I think it's also his draft status. I mean, this guy was after he beat Georgia. Some people thought the top quarterback in the draft. He slipped all the way down to 6th right now in projections. Yeah. He was the Heisman Trophy favorite. He's not even on the board anymore. And I don't think
I don't know that I've ever seen, Mick, from preseason to midseason, the flips that we've seen in terms of the Heisman Trophy. Isn't it crazy? Carson Beck has gone from a guy that a lot of people expected to maybe complete the Heisman national title and maybe number 1 draft pick. I'm over in Atlanta. There is a huge portion of Georgia fans that want him benched. I mean, people asking, how bad could the backup quarterback be in Gunnar Stockton that Carson Beck is still in the game? Aaron Murray over here has now gone after Carson Beck a little bit. So I think it's interesting for a lot of aspects. I think that if you're going to be honest, I think LSU fans probably expected a little bit more out of Garrett Nussmeier, right? I mean, there's a guy that is going to he's going to tally up a ton of yards. They've got playmakers. They've got good wide receivers. He's also going to throw you a few balls, right? He's going to throw 2 or 3 interceptions, it feels like, every week, and in meaningful situations. So I think what a lot of people expected to be, some of those Heisman front runners, some of those guys that are number 1 draft picks and things like that, hasn't really panned out. Now all of a sudden you look at a guy like, I think, Travis Hunter, or maybe Miami's quarterback, the odds-on favorite for the Heisman. It's pretty crazy how this season has gone for some of these signal callers in the SEC. I mean, Quinn Ewers is kind of in that same conversation, right? Does some good things, but still questions about what he can do against quality opponents. So, I'm with you. I think Jalen Milroe's draft status or lack thereof is going to be a topic of conversation for the next couple of months. And, I don't think he's alone in that category.
Yeah, it's interesting too, man. You're exactly right. You look at the backup quarterback's always the guy everybody thinks is going to come in and save the day. And my question is Jalen Milroe going to get back to running the football? Because I think that's what he does well. I think he's dynamic. But if he doesn't improve, and I talked about this on my channel earlier this week. I talked about it a little bit with Clint Lamb, but all of a sudden now you're starting to hear people say, hey, is Milroe coming back to college next year? Could he come back if his draft status continues to slide? So he's got 4 games to get it turned around. This one's the most important one.
Yeah, and I hate to even go down this road, but I wonder if you don't find yourself in a situation much like Ohio State did a year ago, where you feel really good about your quarterback, but maybe not great, right? If he's coming back for another year, and Ohio State kind of gave their quarterback last year, the kid at Syracuse, now they kind of gave him one of these, right? And brought in Will Howard. So I don't know, man. I think a lot of that, honestly, to my point earlier, I think a lot of that's going to be answered this week. I think to me, this is such a litmus test of where you are. You're coming off a bye week. You got fresh legs. You've been able to kind of look inside your program, look inside your offensive scheme, your defensive scheme, do some self-scouting, really get in the film work. And I think that this is going to be a great test for where you are as a program. Look, you and I have talked about it. We had it on video last week of us talking about the retention rate for what the players will be this offseason. You also, right now, according to a number of websites, you have the number 1 recruiting class. So everything from that aspect points in the right direction. But what you are right now and whether you can keep the ball rolling in terms of personnel, there's a lot going on this weekend because I think this is your last real test on the schedule. Not that Oklahoma or Auburn can't jump up and beat you, and Lord knows we've seen it happen. Almost happened last year. But man, this is a quality team with a quality offense and a quality, personnel group that can go up against you. And I think that Jalen Milroe and this team hopefully are coming out to prove some things this weekend.
Alabama needs this one too, Mike, because if they lose, they're out. And can you imagine what the next 3 weeks are going to be like when you lose to LSU and you're out? Like, what are we talking about? Oh, this Mercer game, are we going to bring in Ty Simpson? What's going to happen? I mean, it's tough when you replace Saban because every single year, even 2010, which to me was the leadershipless team and the one that had, I thought, way too much talent not to be a national champion, or I think they were the best team in the country. They just didn't play the best in the country.
Which one was that? 2010?
2010. Yeah, I thought that was. I mean, you look back at that roster and everything else. There's a couple positions where you make a couple moves here or there, and that team could have rolled through everybody. They had some bad luck, obviously, that South Carolina game, but nonetheless, every other year you look at it, man, Alabama's in it until the end. This one right here, you lose this one because of that Vandy loss, even with the 12-team playoff. And guess what, buddy? We're talking about the Cheez-It Bowl. We're talking about, like, you know what I'm saying? Where it's what
Duke's
are we doing?
Mayonnaise Bowl, yeah.
The Cheez-It Bowl. I mean, wouldn't that be fun? You're gonna get the Cheez-It Bowl shirt.
No, and look, man, I think you're spot on. Like I said, I think that's why I think so much rides on what this game is for Jalen Milroe and his ability. And I use the word legacy loosely because you mentioned it. He could technically come back for another year. I probably don't think he wants to. I think I think it would be an amicable separation because I don't know that he really fits in the end what Kalen DeBoer wants to do. I've been on the side of Jalen Milroe and this offensive line throughout a lot of the early season. But I think when you look at the Tennessee game and really the first quarter and a half of the Missouri game, I don't think they played well. I think the offensive line played well. You're not doing anything in the run game, Mick, offensive line wise, that just causes you to go, oh, wow, that was cool. Like, it's very, very basic. It's double teams. It's a duo run. It's inside zone. I mean, there's nothing crazy going on. So you would think that, hey, they ought to be able to do it well and do it at a high fold. But Jalen Milroe's got to be able to run north and south, and they haven't been able to do that for some time now, going all the way back to Vanderbilt. Now, he did it a couple times against Georgia, but you look at what Jalen Milroe's been over the course of his career as a runner. It's honestly not great. He's the best athlete on the field, but I don't know how good Jalen Milroe actually is in open space. Right? I mean, we see so many times that he can outrun people to the edge and he can, run people over, but can he make anybody miss? And I think that's one of the things I want to see in his progression as a runner, down this stretch run here. So hopefully you can go out and get one this weekend. But I'm with you. I heard this stat, Mick. I had to go back and check this. This is the first time that both of these teams have come into this game with 2 losses in 18 years. 18 years, going back to 2006, I believe, that both of these teams have come into this game with 2 losses. Because if you remember, even in 2005, I think we had 1 loss going into this game against LSU, which that was Jamarcus Russell, and that was a big deal. So no, I think we were undefeated going into this game. As a matter of fact, we lost to Auburn that year. Yeah, man, 19 of the last 20 years or whatever it is, that one of these teams has had 1 or less losses going into this game. So it does feel. And I think it's same way for LSU. It does feel like kind of unnatural territory for both these teams.
It's a must win. If you want to have a chance this season, it's a must win. But it is what it is, man. That Vanderbilt loss, it just hurts so much. And then the way that Alabama played against Tennessee, where they were better, but they just didn't win. It's time for this team to grow up and get the job done. I mean, really, or the legacy of this team is going to be. You know what? Yeah, Saban wasn't there, but you know what? It's going to be the leadership let them down and that they took a step back. If they win this game, they're still alive for everything they want.
Yeah, and I think the leadership thing is a big deal. I look at what Tyler Booker is, Mick, and I think I don't know if I've said this to you on the show or not, but Tyler Booker, I don't know that we've seen an offensive lineman like Tyler Booker, and I'm trying to think, man. Obviously, Andre Smith would go in that category, but just in terms of leadership and ability, I can't even think of a guy like Tyler Booker. Like, he is that guy. He's probably the best offensive lineman in the country right now. Not like I go watch all their film, but man, he's playing at such a high level. So this game suits him. And I would love us to lean on Tyler Booker, especially with Caden Proctor next to him, who Lord knows has had his ups and downs, but really a quality player, and Parker Brailsford at center as well. You know, Mick, we just talked about that 2008 game, and you can kind of echo this because I felt this way in the time, and maybe that was how everybody else did. I would play him between Andre Smith and Antoine Caldwell that year, and we went into that game feeling like it was us three that were going to be able to win that game. Like, it just felt like it was the left side of the offensive line that if we were going to win in Baton Rouge, like, that's how we were going to do it, right? You were going to run with Glenn Coffey, hope that JP Wilson could make some throws and Julio could make some plays as well, but you're going to win with defense, and you were going to run off the left side of that offensive line. So I think that's kind of how I look at this one. And you know how I look at football. It's always off the offensive line, but I think I look at what they are and what they could be. And I love, honestly, even on some of the runs you didn't do well against Missouri, I still think that they were good runs in terms of how patient some of these guys were. And I think that there's a lot to be said of that. You saw some of the explosives come to fruition in the second half. So, man, let's get some double teams up front. Let's get north and south. Let's see if we can get Jalen going the same way he did last year against LSU. And let's see if he can put his stamp on this team.
Yeah, that'd be great, man. That'd be great. Well, LSU's dealing with an injury on that offensive line, and we'll kind of finish up with this. How's that going to affect them? And it's their left tackle, right?
No, it's their left guard. So Dellinger is their left guard. It's interesting you say that because Will Campbell's their left tackle. Now, Mick, those two have played next to each other since they were freshmen. And so I think between the two of them, I think they've started like 30 games in a row next to each other. So not having that left guard, Dellinger's name, in that role, that's huge. And it was interesting because Brian Kelly's kind of asked about it and asked about the guy that's going to play in his spot. And he was complimentary in a way that was not, I didn't feel like he was that confident. You know what I mean? It was like one of those, like, you know, he's scratched and clawed his way into that role. And, you know, he's kind of learned along the way. And, you know, he's one of those guys that shows up and goes to work. You know, you're like, at no point does he say, man, he's a great player, or, you know, the sky's the limit for him, or, you know, he's come along. He's just like, well, you know, we're going to see what we got. So I think that's huge. I think that the loss of that offensive line spot, now when you look at Garrett Nussmeier, they're going to throw the ball over the yard, right? That's just what they are. They're going to try to throw the ball for 500 yards. Yeah. And the only thing that gets in the way is when Garrett Nussmeier throws those picks. So can you bring some of those cross blitzes, some of those stunts that we had so much success against Missouri with, get in Garrett Nussmeier's face and force some of those bad balls? Now, Garrett Nussmeier did a good job against Texas A&M of using his check downs, using his tailbacks. They tallied up some pretty good yardage out of the backfield. But if you can just make sure that the check downs aren't there, walk the safeties up, do whatever you need to do, and rush up the middle, rush some of those twist stunts, I think we can get home. I think our defensive line played very well against Missouri in that aspect. And I think that's one of the more exciting things when I look towards this weekend is, can you find a soft spot in the middle of that LSU offensive line? And if you can, Garrett Nussmeier's not a guy that, you know, like Jaden Daniels last year, it's going to get out of the pocket and run a 4-4. He's not really going to make you hurt if you can't bring him down and run some of those blitzes. So I think Kane Womack can be aggressive this weekend in that aspect. And, you know, to me, that's what I'll be looking for when I turn on that TV on Saturday.
All right, Mike, always great to talk to you. And I want to remind all of you guys that we're brought to you by mybookie.ag. Use the promo code next round to double your initial deposit. The Bama game line right now is 2.5. Bama's the favorite. You know, we'll see what happens between now and kickoff. Also, covercrimson.com. It's time for you guys to join and be part of us. Get to the message board, make some comments, do your thing over there. And we'll be on there with you as well, redesigning everything as we speak. But for those of you that are on here from the beginning, you'll have on the message board that OG badge, you know, the original Just like Mike, he's the Saban OG champion, from 09. So you guys take advantage of that. You also get the Cover Crimson t-shirt when you buy the annual subscription. And you and I will get back together later this week. When it gets closer, we'll break down the game and everything else in the SEC. I love when we do that. That's always fun, man. But roll Tide, my friend.
Yeah, roll Tide, buddy.